Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here. So as we're still going to give a little bit more bandwidth for people to join in, and whilst we do so, we want to get started and maybe introduce ourselves a little bit better and get to know each other a bit more through the chat. The team for today here, it's me here, Valentina speaking. I'm going to be a facilitator, and I'm working with Nacar, UX strategy and design innovation for the phygital world. And I have Bernd.
Hello, I'm Bernd. I'm from Austria with industrial design background, and I do take care of a lot of the innovation activities, sustainability activities at Nacar as well. That's why I'm here in the call facilitating the toolkit. And Sophie is going to join us as well, the moderator and facilitator of the everything, all the background stuff of the conversation that we're going to have. So
Hello.
She's going to actually look at your questions and all the things in the chat and make sure there's an eye on everyone.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Sofia, Nacar's social media and community manager. So as Bernd said, I will be your moderator here, reading the chat, your comments, and if you have any issues, just let me know. So what do you think if we start using the chat? We're very curious to know about you all. So if you want to introduce yourselves, letting us know in the chat where you come from, maybe a little bit of your background. We think it's also an opportunity to grow your professional network, as all the attendees will be reading that as well. So go ahead, we can start chatting and tell us what's your design superpower. I'm reading, we're reading. What about you, Bernd and Valen? What's your design superpower?
I don't know if I have one, but I think what I would like is like some sort of supply chain X-ray for me to like look at an object and see exactly what happened to it, what things it went through for it in the end to end up in front of me, to tap in the history into objects. That would be nice.
That's super interesting.
What about you?
So I think my superpower is looking at everything holistically and grabbing all the aspects from a product or solution, and never losing track of any detail. So that's superpower that I have. And we have Alessandra here, no? She's Italian.
Her superpower is asking difficult questions. She's from Italy, yes. So
Challenge.
I hope we can answer her difficult questions today.
Very good.
And systemic thinking, yes, indeed, is a great superpower.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very big part of the conversation that we're going to have today. We have Danae, which is a team member.
From Nacar.
Translate design to the non-designers. Well, that's also a very big superpower. Evangelizing. Anyone else that wants to join in? Hi, Joffrey.
From Barcelona, working as a technical project manager, engineer in a tech company in Paris. Whoa, we make smart home products. Nice.
Super nice.
João Santos, industrial designer from Portugal. A tech for home. I lost it here. A company that designs, develops, and supplies remote controls for TV operators. Wow, super interesting.
I heard about tech for home.
I love superpower of translation. Nice.
We have Silvia. Hi, Silvia. And your superpower is organization. And we have your website. That's awesome. Yes.
Awesome. Let me check that out now.
Yeah.
I will copy that.
And we have Miroslav. I hope I'm pronouncing it.
Sí, Miroslav.
The ability to design beautiful and functional products that people love. That's very good.
Sweet.
And Carlos, polyvalency and positive energy. Perfect. We love positive.
Nice one.
If you find someone interesting, you can introduce yourselves, maybe exchange your LinkedIn accounts just to grow your business contacts. So
exactly. The whole session should be to bring people together, right? We're all in this. So collaboration is key. So go out and get to meet people.
Indeed.
Osvaldo from Colombia. Her superpower is to implement creative thinking into business processes and teams. Wow.
Nice. And already people share.
We have Aleph Orvis LinkedIn account. So if anyone is interested in his profile, you can go and check it out.
So I think we're ready to start, unless there's someone else that wants to add their superpower. Okay. So Sophie and Bernd, I'm gonna continue. Okay.
Perfect.
Of course.
I'm gonna leave the chat over with Sophia. Sophie, if you see anything pop up, just let me know. Okay. So I'm gonna close. Good. So thank you all for joining us, and over the next 1.5 hours we want to share our humble first moments towards sustainable design, what sparked the movement to really change the way we design products and services, and what we needed to have in place to make that all happen. So for today, we have 3 main areas to cover. So a little bit of starting from the problem and discussing and talking a little bit about us and what we are aiming for. And then Bernd is going to share with us the toolkit that we are developing, and it's in constant construction to analyze our projects, but also ourselves through a critical lens to discover circular opportunities, both for products and services and businesses. As Bernd was saying before, we intend for this session to be as participative as possible, and we want to learn from you, and connect and network also. So please ask away and leave comments over the chat whilst we are presenting. Make sure that you have this all panelists and attendees option selected in the chat while you're doing so. And as you see, we have allocated some sections for Q&A specifically after each of the toolkits. So we will use the Q&A platform to answer your questions. Sophia is also going to be looking into the ones that already started popping up and have that discussion there. You can also raise your hand like in Zoom, and we can also enable the microphone access for you to talk directly, which that will be awesome too. Okay, so before we start, I wanted to talk about sustainable design and some issues that we've found around the topic. So for the last couple of weeks, we've been doing some small surveys around social media and trying to see where these main issues are. And before I share what we got as results, I wanted to hear from you. So I'm going to share now a very quick poll. And you should be able to see it now. So it's 3 questions that I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to answer. So first one, have you or your company ever consulted sustainability specialists? And you can answer directly there on the poll. Second one, what is the biggest barrier keeping you from creating more sustainable design solutions? And third, have you ever pitched a more sustainable design solution to a client and have it rejected? And for the third one, if you say yes, you can also put in the comments maybe some of the reasons why it got rejected. That will be very interesting. Okay, so the answers are starting to come in. I'm gonna give you 1 more minute. Great, so 50% voted. Coming in. Okay, I see. Usually from the 9, rejected when prioritizing because of cost or time needed to be allocated. Okay. Anyone else have their projects rejected? Hi, Laura. Okay. I'm gonna end the poll now, so last 5 seconds for anyone that wants to answer. And
go.
End. Great. So I'm gonna share the results so that everyone can see. So what we see is like almost half and half. That have consulted sustainability specialists. The biggest barrier that I see is lack of resources, lack of time, and lack of buy-in, but most of all of the above. So it's a very systemic issue. And have you ever pitched this? The majority, 62% said that you did. So, and have it rejected. So I think, Laura is also saying just same here. Most of the times rejected for time or cost. Okay. So I want to share now the results that we got, which are very in line with what you're commenting now. So with regards to how they were feeling, if they were committed to sustainable practices, yes, we had a 50% yes and a 50% no. So I think there's a lot of work for us to do there and get that commitment to sustainable design. With regards to pitching and getting the solution rejected, it was abruptly yes, so it's huge. So, and one of the biggest constraint was cost and perhaps also the out of reach tech and knowledge, And the biggest barrier that we got from our answers was, first of all, lack of investment, lack of resources, lack of time, and lack of buy-in, And I think as we saw now in the survey, it's something that happens generically, it's systemic, that we get all these 4 actual parts that are blocking, our ability to promote and carry over design solutions. And we often find ourselves in these problem situations. And as we were delving into why we see that most of the time that we're facing these issues is mainly because of old models or being stuck behind silos and hierarchies, These models that really do not make sense when you start thinking about all the players that can be in a circular systems. So models and all systems that really need to be broken to drive sustainable change. And our ability to break old models is strongly related to our ability to innovate. For that, we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing to innovate and how are we doing so? So for that, I want for us to consider the 8 essentials of innovation. These often overlapping iterative and non-sequential practices can be thought of in 2 groups. So the first 4, which are strategic and creative in nature, aspire, choose, discover, and evolve, help set and prioritize the terms and conditions under which innovation is most likely to thrive. The next 4 essentials, accelerate, scale, extend, and mobilize, work with how to deliver and organize for innovation repeatedly over time and with enough value to contribute meaningfully to the overall performance. For today's call, we want to focus on the first three, which are mostly aligned with the initial phase of our toolkit. And as we see it, they are the keys to enable change on the rest of the areas. So, when we look at Aspire, the one to be an innovative company, we need to navigate the waters, get a sense of your playing field, to propel a far-reaching vision that can be a compelling catalyst, that can stimulate action today. That's something, it's realistic, but it's really also setting a goal. And here we really need to question ourselves, do we have the buy-in for sustainable change in our company? And we need to understand why not? Also because the level of aspiration, it's directly influencing the performance of all the other areas. So if management is not interested in innovation or our proposals, definitely no successful innovative products will ever be released. So this was going to force us back to the drawing board to pitch stronger opportunities. And for those opportunities, we need to really combine high-level aspirations with estimates of the value that this potential innovation, should or could generate. Secondly, we need to make clear bets. We need to think, where is our best option? The one that you can support and scale. Innovation is inherently risky. And to be sure I'm getting the most from a portfolio of innovation initiatives is more about managing risk than eliminating it. And here we need to understand and we need to ask ourselves, do we know where our risks lay? We need to really grasp into that. No company can allocate useful budgets to all of its innovation projects. Managers need to make clear decisions about what projects in their portfolio need to be worked on and follow the decision with clear investment that can make the project real and successful. And for this, we need to seek for a balance in between initiatives that have impact in three horizons. The first horizon being initiatives that maintain and strengthen the core business, the now. Second horizon is initiatives that explore and discover new opportunities, something that is a bit more disruptive. And third, but not least, is initiatives that create new possibilities, for emerging futures, that set a vision and that are looking to transform, what's coming ahead of us. And never forgetting that while we're doing these initiatives, we also need to execute the correct governance to push them through. We need to have that buy-in to get that moving along. And last but not least, discover. We need to jump in the water. We need to deep dive and get the feeling of what's happening, what is the problem, And actionable and differentiated insights only come by deeply understanding the problem we want to solve. So usually there is never a shortage of ideas, only a shortage of good ideas, and good ideas are based on solid insights. If we manage to find a way and get discovering needs on the market that no one else can, it's going to be incredibly valuable and an endless place for opportunities and finding new ideas. For this, we need to look for insights by methodically and systematically scrutinizing what is valuable, feasible, and desirable, the three cores of what we see now as innovation. But what I believe here is that it's where we can most centrally drive sustainable change. Because here, if we expand the three areas of innovation, added sustainability as an encompassing force that is not looking for one directional growth, rather circling a triple bottom line that includes people, the planet, and economic profit. And I will show you a little bit of a diagram of what we are aspiring to get also from Nacar. So where or how do we start? So at Nacar, we are committed to asking these questions to drive change. But before we get into it deeper, I want to introduce ourselves a little bit more, and so that you know who is Nacar, what we do, and what we're made of. So we integrate business requirements and customer needs that drive design strategies for products, services, and businesses across multiple sectors. So we are a design agency that's working in a 360-degree angle. Our history dates back from 2006. We're born in Barcelona, and we have an approach of a global reach. We work with clients and challenges with a global mindset. We have clients ranging from HP, Zurich, local also companies like Coulter, Roca, Massat. So it's very interesting for us to have also a very wide portfolio and also having different industries. So we have clients from consumer goods to medical devices to hospitality. So it's very diverse. And this global reach is also accomplished through our agile and ever-growing international team of over 70 creative professionals. We all work multidisciplinarily. So we are design strategies, researchers, product and UX UI designers, engineers, but most of all creatives in continuous growth. And also we are very proud of our melting pot of cultures. So we have over 15 cultures from around the globe, all in the Nacar. So that gives us also a very global perspective. Sadly, today, given the pandemic, we couldn't invite you to our offices, but we wanted to make it present. So one day, if you are in Barcelona or if you come to Barcelona, you can come and meet us. So we are located in Palo Alto, which is an old factory in Poblenou district that it's fully restored and converted into studios and workshops for designers and artists. And we have this green oasis here. So you're welcome anytime, after the pandemic, of course. And we have 4 pillars to drive the change. From one side, we have the strategic design. We want to ambition. We want to set the way and challenge the assumptions that are going to guide us also along the creative process to create value and shape by design. Second, we have an ecosystem view. We want to shape compelling user experience by designing seamless ecosystems of physical and digital products, as I was saying before, a 360-degree understanding and collaboration and definition. Also, collaboration. We like to say that we don't design for, we design with. We collaborate with our clients, integrating their strategies, people's needs, and technologies into the best viable, feasible, and desirable solutions. And last but not least, business impact. We are always seeking to align with the business strategic objectives and measure results for all size companies and teams. This is all driven through 5 services. 3 of them are vertical, and then we have 2 horizontal services. First of all, delivering research and insights, where we seek to understand behaviors, to discover what people want and need. Design and business strategy, to stay relevant and influence the market, by developing companies' positioning and core insights. And of course, product and service design, so designing services that meet customer needs and products that enable the delivery of that service. Also, innovation management. So one of the biggest challenges that we have is getting that buy-in. So what we seek here is to accelerate the adoption of new innovation methods to increase organizational performance. And last, connecting people, services, and products through smart solutions to transform industry. So we understand that we cannot work as an island. We don't work in isolation. So collaboration is a big part, and having also partners that work with us to deliver the solutions. And the main reason that we are all here is that we are working, as I was mentioning, to a triple bottom line. We understand that successful innovations are that intersect between feasible, viable, and desirable solutions. But we want to expand that. We want sustainability to encompass this entire innovation process, and that we don't work in, as I was saying, not just one unidirectional growth model. No, we want to have a positive impact both on the economic profit side of the projects also on the people, a positive impact on the people that we design for, we design with, and on the planet. And this is where I'm going to leave the stage to my colleague and friend Bernd, who is going to talk you more about the toolkit and the initiatives that we have internally for this.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you, Valentina. So I'm pretty much going to go through the toolkits that we developed. We basically went out and gathered pretty much like a curriculum of toolkits that are already out there, tried a couple of them out, did some research, checked what works, what doesn't work, and pretty much modified them into a thing that actually worked for us for Nacar Design. And as Valentina said, this first area is pretty much focusing on how do you get buy-in, like basically finding opportunities for a client, but also figuring out how these opportunities can in the end actually get buy-in from either clients or from management or anyone who is this decision maker, right? Because a lot of these toolkits either don't take that into account, or as we saw, much of the problems that these sustainable solutions have that we propose just don't get that buy-in, and there's always something missing. And so hopefully this toolkit is going to be helpful for you. It is work in progress, but we're actually going to share the slides with you afterwards, so you know exactly, you can actually go and try it for yourself. And also after the call, in a few days after, we will actually share the toolkit itself with you, get feedback from you. Obviously, we'll be very happy for feedback. You can also, in the presentation, there is also my contact. So write me, we can have a chat about it. So we're open to collaborating on a better toolkit. So I'm going to get right into it. The first thing that I'm actually going to talk about is discovering opportunities for change by analyzing products and services, right? So before getting right into it, I'd actually have a question for you, and you can vote on that. Exactly. My question actually is, have you ever used, and I think by now you should see it, have you ever used any of these design toolkits? They're very well-known toolkits, the value proposition map, user journey map, mood boards, etc. So it would be interesting to see how many of you have ever tried to use those. See answers coming in already. In case anyone doesn't see the polls or anything, or it doesn't work for you, let us know in the chat, and we'll figure out if there's any technical problem that we need to solve, right? So I'll give you 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and polling. Let me share the results with you. So we do have a winner with the mood boards, obviously a tool for actually sharing a certain concept direction with a client or working internally. The value proposition map, a couple of people are using, and the user journey map, which I'm happy that so many people are using. 2 people tried none of them. Try them out, they're very helpful. So I'll stop sharing this. As a second question that I have for you now is, how many of you do know this tool, the butterfly diagram? Have you ever heard of it or worked with it? Answers coming in fast. Bam, bam, bam. Okay, there's hope. Giving you a few more seconds. 10. And again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's it. But end polling and share results. Apparently, no one has ever worked with it or heard about it. Hopefully, the toolkit is now actually going to give you a little bit of an overview. So I have a section in the presentation that is talking about the butterfly diagram, and I'm pretty much going to get right into it. So what the butterfly diagram is, it's actually a pretty useful visualization tool. It's from the MacArthur Foundation, pretty much the international foundation for anything that is circular economy. And what they basically do is they gave us a little bit of a tool for visualizing what kind of paths a product goes through after its useful life, right? So you do see two segments, and that is why it's called the butterfly diagram. You see the top is pretty much mining and mining resources, getting resources into a system. It goes down through production, retail, distribution, and then to the customer. And then a product could either go all the way down to a landfill, or maybe it gets burned and there's some energy extraction before, or it actually goes into the technical cycle or into the biological cycle. The main difference between the two is you would analyze a product if it's an organic material, if it's biological, of biological nature. You would actually try and analyze it from the biological cycles or the opportunities that it has. And if it's something like a computer mouse, a chip, or anything that is a very technical material, you would actually use the other side, the technical material cycle. So that's a lot of information on one diagram. So I'm just going to go through the different cycles with you. The first one on the technical side being maintaining a product. That is pretty much after, or the concept of it is, instead of throwing it away or instead of recycling, is it possible for a product to be repaired by the user itself? Not me going to the manufacturer and sending it back and then I get something, but how can I repair it, right? And the reason why it's such a small circle is because this requires the least amount of energy to bring the product back into its useful state again, to make it have use or value in the economy again, right? So this is why it's why it's great if you can produce a product that obviously is further in on the cycles of the butterfly diagram. A service or a business concept actually of this, and a great example for maintainability is iFixit. I don't know if you know the YouTube channel. They started out as a YouTube channel and basically just made tutorials on how you can fix your laptop, how you can fix your phone. And then it grew and grew and grew massively until they actually said, okay, we're just going to sell our own toolkits to people that are actually made for phones or for laptops, etc. And what they're actually also now doing is they're pretty much a little bit of an industry standard of rating different products by their repairability, right? Which is great because you can look at phones and see, is it easy to exchange a screen if it breaks before I'm buying it, etc. So you get those ratings from them. Perfect example of a company that focuses specifically on that furthest inside circle. Moving further outwards is the concept of reusing a product. So moving it from what do I need to do to move it basically from one user to another one, and then the other user actually using the same product. It's a little bit further out of the cycle because you already have to put up a little bit of a distribution system now, right? So how does it get from A to B? There's Wallapop, there's Ubico, so everything that is pretty much second-hand market falls into this area as well. And reuse, obviously a great example for reuse are these things of car sharing concepts, because not only does it make sharing and moving from one user to the next extremely simpler, but it also maximizes the efficiency of one product, meaning less products in the end would be actually made because one product serves hundreds of people, right? So this already is a really good example of that. The third one, already a bit further out on the circle because it needs more energy, is the idea of remanufacturing a product. This is something that is pretty much a standard in an area that Nacar Design is also working in the industrial market, because these products pretty much live for 20, 30 years sometimes. So they kind of need to be constantly updated, or just parts of it need to be updated. So the idea is either you send it back, you actually reduce, it gets refurbished and you get another updated product back, or someone comes to your site and actually updating the product. So here for us designers, the concept of modularity is really important, because only through modularity can you actually achieve that sort of upgradability, right? And all the way on the outside is recycling. Why is it so far out? Well, because you're pretty much making it a raw material again that first actually needs to be transported, it needs to be chopped up, it needs to go through a filtering process, it will be made into raw material again, and then it needs to actually be injection molded again, etc. So there's a lot that you need to do in order to even close that cycle, and a lot of energy that goes into the product in the end. So here actually a question that came up very often, I think, for designers, for me at least. Do you know, and I'm just going to open the poll here for a second. You're able to vote this one as well. Exactly. Do you think that in this form of the picture that you see up here, for one-use plastics, is it better or worse to use black plastics? What do you think? It's a fight. No Googling. After 1 minute, I'm not accepting the answers anymore. Vale. Gonna give you 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bam, end polling. And here I will share the results. Not quite sure the audience, seemingly. So 56% said worse, 44% said better. Why is it actually worse? The reason for that is it's not because of the material itself. The material itself, actually black plastic, is amazing because you could upcycle plastic, right? So you could upcycle less quality plastic to be black plastic. But the problem is that almost every recycling facility on the planet cannot see those black plastics. So basically they could be recycled, but they actually go through the sensors and just land directly on landfill. So sorry, the problem for designers obviously is always that they're being asked to do premium packaging, etc. Very often the default is black. So hopefully that actually gets you to actually think of other solutions, not black plastics, right? So, vale, okay, cool. So now that you know the answer, rethink all the uses of black plastics. In single-use plastic, the ones that go through the machine, right? If there's another recycling process for example, big industrial black plastic panels, those are being recycled a little bit differently, and black plastics could actually be useful in that sense. So the situation kind of makes a difference there, but definitely for packaging like that, don't use them anymore. So going to the biological cycle, what are the options there? So if you think of biological or organic products, it's already a little bit difficult for designers because we're not really very often working with those. But the only thing that you can pretty much right now do with organic waste, let's say, is to try and cascade through different applications. So if you, for example, use coffee grounds, there's a lot of businesses actually that pick up coffee grounds from restaurants, so used coffee grounds already in the trash bin, and use that as a substrate to grow mushrooms on, or culinary mushrooms, then selling them back to the restaurants in the area. So they basically close that type of cycle and at least get a little bit of use out of the product directly before it goes into any other, the next cycles, which is like soil restorations, biochemical feedstock, etc. This here is traditionally extremely difficult for designers because we know very little about it, and even at Nacar, well, there's let's say we're not often used to organic materials, so all the things of anaerobic digestion, composting, etc., that needs specialists that you would need to work with. So I'm very excited if there's any specialist in here in the chat about this. Please get in contact with us. We're super keen on learning more about this. Internally, we're going to set up learning calls for this. So Nacar already is going to be a bit more knowledgeable in that direction. But already, for example, on the market, even on the consumer side, there's extreme confusion about this because everything that is bio is not really compostable. So you could say, what, bioplastics? There's people that actually throw bioplastics into the organic bin. What is the difference between biodegradable and compostable? Is it compostable without any other inputs? There's a lot of questions there, and there's actually no labeling. There's no official labeling in Europe for this. So there's continuing to be problems about that topic. So knowing a little bit about the technical cycle, I'd actually like to know what you think would happen to, stop sharing results. Sorry. What do you actually think happens to a, where is it? Exactly here. What do you think happens mostly to a phone charger after its useful life, or after its use? Where do you think it would pass through? Depends on the color. Good one. I like that. I'll let you get 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and that's it. Boom. Oh, another one came in. Just in time. Vale, share results. So you kind of already have a little bit of a distribution here, right? A lot of people say it goes on to landfill. Some actually gets recycled. Some people say a bit of it might be refurbished, maintained, etc. So that is kind of the beauty of that tool, right? You kind of get a little bit of a percentage distribution of what most of the products actually go through. The point here, though, is this is a hypothesis now, right? So if a lot of it goes through landfill, or if maybe a little bit more goes through recycling, that's a hypothesis that we have. But the point of the tool is that you now have this distribution, and you can actually now go out and ask specific questions. You can actually say, oh, this thing, you could actually, if you would design a charger cable, call the recycling factory or the recycler of the market that you're making this for, and say, look, this is the project. Is this recyclable in your area or not? And then you have the answer, right? So this is kind of the beauty of the butterfly diagram. It gives you a distribution. It shows you where the problem kind of is. And then it asks you the question, how could you bring it further into the circle, right? So it's really a visual helper for you. But the thing is, most of our projects, specifically at Nacar, they are a lot more complex than that. Also, I'm sure that most of your projects are more complex than that. So the butterfly diagram as itself is already a tool, but it's just not enough. So basically, I'm going to ask you the same question with a Tesla. What do you think, going through, what do you think a Tesla would go through after its useful cycle, let's say? Miroslav, are you going to say it depends on the color again? That would be good.
Carlos, you can maybe also add, if you have more answers or options, you can also add them here on the chat. No?
Yeah. We're reading.
Vale, 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go. Okay, cool. So I'm going to share the results here. Very different than before, right? We have a little bit of a winner within the polls of refurbish, but pretty much we are not quite sure, obviously, because it's a complex product. You can't just use the butterfly diagram in a way of analyzing the product as itself, because the whole car is not going to go all the way through recycling. Neither is all of it going to go onto the landfill. So that is pretty much why we remodeled the system a little bit and actually set up a new toolkit for that. And the idea here is that before you use the butterfly diagram, you basically see if you can split up the whole thing a little bit and make it better and easier for analyzing. So one thing is the product and the service itself. The second level, though, that you can do is have a look at the inner ecosystem of the product. That means, well, the question would be, can you split the product into functional areas? What are those functional areas? And as a third step, actually, also think about the outer ecosystem around the product. What is constantly in connection with your product? What does your product need in order to work? There's very strong relations between products already on the market, and this influence needs to be taken into account. So as an example, starting with the product or service, something that in each of those segments, what you should be doing is actually ask, what is the purpose of the product and how does it really serve it, right? So what problem does the product solve, and with what specific features is it really doing that? Because very often you actually hit the point and say, wait a minute, we could actually do this completely differently. We could solve this problem not with that product, but with a simplified version of it probably. So with the car, obviously it was difficult because it's so complex, but nevertheless, it's the first layer to start out with. The inner ecosystem of it would be something like, well, for example, the motor block of it, dismantling it into the different areas of the wires, the battery, the seats, all of these different functional areas that you can now a lot simpler analyze of what happens when the car actually loses its functionality, because maybe the seats don't in that area, right? So the more complex the product is, the more you need to have a look at this inner ecosystem before actually then mapping them out on the butterfly diagram. And the next thing is the outer ecosystem. What is the thing that is around the product? So here, an example would be, let's say, the skiing box of a car, but also the street that it drives on, the infrastructure around it. Can a car company influence the infrastructure around it in a way that for a sustainable concept, let's say? Tesla and BMW did influence a lot the charging stations that are now to be found everywhere in Europe and US. So you need to be aware of what are the things that your product touches, and in what way could you or your client company influence these other products and what kind of more circular opportunities can you find maybe within them. So this is pretty much this whole holistic view on your product. Another little example, just as a small, we don't just talk about cars, but if you think about coffee machines, there's coffee going in. What are the coffee makers that you are partnering up with? Do they maybe work with certain more circular, regenerative business models? Or are you maybe not allowing users to even place plastic cups, just reusable cups? So there's a lot of different concepts that you could come up with if you look at the outside ecosystem. So our job pretty much as designers is, once we have a little bit of a distribution, to figure out, is that distribution correct? And that needs a little bit of research. Just like you said, okay, we think a lot of the chargers go to landfill. Is this distribution correct? And then once you have the distribution, our job is pretty much these blue arrows here. And that means moving product further into the cycle, right? So moving a product away from landfill, away from recycling, further into maintaining, reuse, and refurbishing. So these arrows kind of turn into 4 arrows, and they turn into 4 question areas. And here you can basically then choose, okay, if you know that all of your products get recycled, well, okay, then this shouldn't be the focus. Let's focus on the other ones. How can I get it to be maintained? What can I do to make it be reused or remanufactured? So here you start generating some ideas, some first opportunities, right? But directly underneath, you should actually ask yourself the question, what would be immediately for the idea, what would be needed for this to actually become real? What is right now standing in the way that it's not already like this? And here you actually see what you need to make sure of in order to get buy-in for this idea. Because let's be honest, if we get to a client with a more sustainable concept, we kind of know what their feedback is going to be, right? there's a lot of questions about budget, about the technology, about So what do I have to do before proposing these in order to get those barriers out of the way? Do I consult with a specialist before and say, yes, absolutely, this technology is super cheap, etc. And we've been working on packaging concepts where this is the case, where the client basically says like, oh, we're not sure about the product. If we meet up with the supplier before and we check that, sometimes it's even a cost decrease because you're working with recycled material, and that means less of a cost, right? So get these things into place before you actually move on. So what, after this exercise, and depending on the complexity of this product that you're analyzing, this could be a day, this could be 1.5 days, because if you're analyzing a massive industrial milling machine, that is like a 2 days project, definitely to map things out. If it's a simple one, then it's like a little bit of a day sprint, let's say. But obviously you will get a lot of opportunities out of this that you can specifically now already early on in the project start and get your client into co-creation sessions, etc. Because the clients are never going to be against sustainable projects, right? A lot of them actually are kind of personally connected to it, but they themselves will also have a hard time to get buy-in from their owners. So get them into co-creation sessions so you figure out their problems with them. You will definitely get first ideas from this. They will be a little bit undefined, but first ideas that you can check with your clients. Definitely a lot of targeted questions, but now they're targeted questions. You know what you don't know, and that is extremely valuable. As soon as you know what you don't know, you can ask people that might know. And the other thing is, well, obviously you'll be exercising your circular brain and you'll build new skills. The more opportunities you research for, the opportunities you check for, the more skills you get and experience you get along the way, meaning less of an effort it will be in the next project. So just to get a little bit of a feeling of when should these kind of thoughts happen, obviously it's never too late, but it's best to do it in the research phase when you already have a little bit of information about the problem at hand that you need to solve. And then once you kind of discover real opportunities, that is when you need to get active about these kind of toolkits, right? Because in generating concepts, you're already too late. You're already trying to solve just the problems. And it's not going to be part of the design brief afterwards. And that will be a problem, because now then you're kind of creating a little bit of an unexpected situation for the client, which is not great. So that was a lot of information. And I'd be obviously happy for any kind of questions. I'm actually going to go out of this for a second so we can see each other. Are there any questions that you have about the toolkit, about anything that we said so far? Obviously in the chat or in the Q&A session. Sorry?
We can maybe use the Q&A tool where they can type their questions and we can mark there if it's answered live or opened. There you have your first one.
The first one is, we will definitely share the documents and we will also share the recording. No?
No, I already.
So how can we use this framework for digital products?
Vale. So digital products and digital products and services, they already have, digital products per se, they already have a very high circularity just by the nature of them being very upgradable, etc. Many of the frameworks are made so that these concepts and these digital products can be modular, so they can quickly be reused and updated. But obviously, what is interesting is the, let's say, flow of data that constantly goes in, is there basically a certain area where data is basically just stuck in the whole cycle of the user, which basically generates a lot more energy. So you can use it. There's a little bit more of creativity that you need in order to mentally get from physical product to digital cycles, right? The other thing is kind of like what power for on a digital product is kind of what powers this complete system. So you will have servers, you will have these servers also are from service providers that could choose to go with renewable energy or not, right? So you can make decisions on what kind of input comes into your system, definitely. And on a, sorry?
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, on a service point of view, depending on the service, many times you would need to also have a little bit of a look at this inner ecosystem of the service and outer ecosystem of the service. Because if you think of a transportation service or a last kilometer service for people from the Barcelona airport to the hotel, there's drivers, there's cars, there's energy being used, there's probably maybe renting bicycles, etc. What happens to these products that are in there and all of these tools that you're using in order to make that work? So you can analyze a service using an inner ecosystem and outer ecosystem framework.
Yeah, and if I may add also, adding this for digital products, I think, as you were saying, no, it's a systemic, no. So we need to understand also from the user perspective, how could this be, promoting a circularity or in reducing even the latency or the amount of energy that if we are talking about an application that would need, or even if that website, or and that's very related to specific design issues, like what type of colors and contrast are you using that consume more or less energy when you're running this application. So it can be very tactic, but it can also be very systemic from that point of view of the digital product.
See, definitely. How can you use it from digital products? What would be the solution to recycle? So this one is answered. The second one, what would be the solution for recycling facilities to recognize black plastics? There is, I'm going to answer live. There is actually a way of doing it. It is a new type of sensors. The problem is that these sensors move very slowly into existing facilities. So hopefully in a few years that will be the thing. But at the moment, it moves extremely slow. It wouldn't be difficult. Technology is there, but as soon as specifically in the last 10 years, a lot of new recycling facilities have been set up, and they don't have extra budget again for a new setup. So that is the problem there. For the next years, definitely black plastic is going to be a no-go because of that problem. Hopefully in a few years that will be solved and you can use black plastic again. Anything else? Have you used it? So have you used this framework to have new ideas or detect opportunities in a workshop, or you use it just to analyze a product? If so, how do you use it to generate ideas? So the toolkit itself, thank you. The toolkit itself is going to be a little bit more of a sprint workshop toolkit in general. So it is basically like to quickly gather people together, brainstorm about different opportunities. And the point here is it's not just one workshop, it's kind of split thing. So you gather opportunities, you figure out if those are really opportunities, you kind of define which ones you want to focus on, and then you have ideation sessions about those. As soon as you have specific opportunities and specific problems that you think you could be solving, it's very, you kind of have a framework already set up for the next brainstorm workshop, right? And that is then where you actually generate ideas. So this one is really just to generate opportunities. So once the opportunities are there, it's pretty simple to start with the ideas afterwards.
Indeed.
Framework measuring circularity. A framework to measure circularity itself, so we can try, measure, and iterate. It is a very, very good point. What is going to be part of the workshop is not just ideating about the idea itself, but about embedding certain feedback loops, right? So, okay, we think this is a great solution. What kind of things do we need to put in place to really then measure that this was a good solution that we brought on the market, right? Right now, none of this is measured in a lot of companies. That's why one of the ideation toolkits that we're gonna make still is ideating on not just the idea, but ideating on how can you embed these kind of feedback loops for the company to see if that really was a proper had a proper impact afterwards. So there's a couple of software things that you can actually, well, there's bits of software that you can use to calculate CO2 footprint of stuff and so on, but they're not very transparent. They really just have like a button and say like calculate CO2 footprint and that's it. So you need to be creative about what kind of feedback loop you could embed for these specific products. There's no standard, there's nothing right now. So it's a thing to solve for us.
Mm-hmm.
How much time do we have for another one?
So let's do a couple more minutes. I think we have
perfect.
more questions.
More questions. Are there any shared online databases around the life cycle of products? Are companies supposed or willing to share this information about their product life cycle? So far, I don't think that there are standards so far, what I know of. There's a couple of standards in certain industries. Obviously like in medical sectors, etc. Tracking supply chain is quite a must, but there is a lot going on in the segment of blockchain interaction, EOS, IOTA, that kind of thing, that basically infers an action without actually checking on that action, but checking on all the other things that can be checked around this action to happen, so that they can say, yes, this happened, this product went through the supply chain, even without checking the actual product, which apparently work pretty well, but those are in super concept stage, and no one is really putting a lot of focus on those right now. So investment money is missing in that segment. I would absolutely love an online database for that kind of stuff. Right now, I don't know of one. If any of you know, then please give me. Yes, another one. Last one for now, or like how many are we going to do?
I think last one for now, because if not, we're going to run out of time.
Okay.
We will register anyways the answers, and maybe we can follow up through email.
I can follow up, yeah, definitely. Which one is this one here now? That was the database, so I answered this one. Perfect. Do you think it's a responsibility of the user to provide for recycling the products, or it should be required to manufacturers, especially consumers' electronics products? It is, so we do have, it's a shared responsibility, but we do have a lot of responsibility on that. If we make it difficult for someone to recycle something, to break materials apart, right, to kind of extract one material from the other in order to actually recycle it, that is on us, 100%. In the end, though, what can actually be recycled is also depending on the situation. Think of, actually, we analyze products now as well in the medical sector. Think of medical packaging in an intensive care unit. How much time are you going to have in order to actually say like, oh, the paper, this, where does it go? Is even a recycling done in this environment, right? So some of it is part government restrictions, but I don't want to put blame on government, basically. A lot of it is on us because we make those solutions and we make it easy or simple or not difficult or not difficult to people. Exactly, that the user itself is often a little bit lazy. There's a lot more consciousness coming up about this. It's a shared responsibility, but 100%, I think a lot more is on us because we give people the opportunity to either do it or not do it. We lower those barriers or raise those barriers quite a lot.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. If you have more questions, you can still keep them and put them up here on
Popping
the Q&A,
up.
and we will try to answer everything over email. But yeah, so we can move on to the next part. Thank you.
I'll thank you, by the way, for all the questions. Very, very nice to see all of those. Now I'm kind of getting into the next segment of the toolkit, which is discovering opportunities by analyzing businesses. And before getting too much into the toolkit, there's one kind of differentiation that I would like to make before. So there's extractive business methods and regenerative business methods. What is the difference between those and why am I explaining this? Regenerative business methods are basically where all of the stakeholders in the business, in the environment of that business, share value or generate value for each other constantly, with the focus on long-term collaboration, long-term interaction, right? Growing together with each other. On the other hand, you have extractive business methods, basically extracting value from one of the stakeholders in this environment or more, and pretty much just generating value for some of the stakeholders in the whole cycle. What would be an example for that? It's a little bit abstract, obviously. Think of Uber, Amazon, Facebook. These I would definitely put on the side of extractive business methods. Regenerative business methods, Patagonia, EcoAlf, a fashion company from Barcelona that do regenerative business really well. They actually focus really on the circularity of their products as well. And Loop. I'm actually going to go into, if you don't know about Loop, cool, because now you hear about something cool. But I'm going to go into that afterwards. So kind of as an example, extractive business methods in the direction of Facebook. Facebook actually started out as being a very regenerative business, because what did they do? They made, pretty much just for the first couple of months, but anyway, they made a great platform for people to share value, generate and share value between each other constantly, right? Facebook groups were made. People were creating content, sharing content with each other, but made by them, made by their environment. At some point, Facebook just said, well, I'm just going to go with advertisement. And suddenly that was a massive shift in value exchange, because instead of you seeing value that was generated by your peers, all other people around you, you just started seeing more and more advertisement. Meaning, Facebook pretty much extracted value from you of user time, or like screen time, basically, push the value away that your friends generated, because that wasn't valuable to them anymore. And what happened after a while? You basically just went onto Facebook, saw a lot of advertisement, and none of the value that actually the people that you would like to see the value from, you couldn't even get to that anymore. It was just shared articles or shared funny videos or shared whatever, or shared advertisement, really. So what people did after a while is, well, they just switched platforms, because Facebook extracted value over a long time until there was nothing more to extract. So people switched to Instagram. First move that Facebook did, buy Instagram. If you look at your feed 3 years ago and now, you see how much more advertisement Facebook is gradually putting in, because they already know they're just going to buy the next platform as well. So this is what I mean with extractive methods, as opposed to Patagonia, which has been there for decades already, and focuses on the community. As soon as they create a factory somewhere, they make sure that the people employed there, there's value generated for them and their families, so that they get a lot of value back. They get long-term interaction between those communities and the company, right? So equal value exchange. Besides, I think most of those companies are actually large companies. Besides being like really evil or good or whatever, what else do you see any difference between, let's say, the companies on the right and the companies on the left? You can just use the chat or raise your hand and we unmute you for a second and you explain to us your idea. What do you think is still something that is different between the three or the six? Any idea? Pricing. Good point. Very good. Patagonia is massively expensive. Anything else? Ah, that's a designer's answer. Definitely. Absolutely. Branding. Vale. I think pricing is also a pretty good point. There's also where the notion comes from a little bit that sustainable is more expensive. Well, one thing that is definitely a difference between them is that the companies that use extractive business methods, they focus on growing fast. Whereas the other ones focus on sustainable growth, right? They grow not just themselves, they grow the communities and everything around them, which absolutely strengthens their business. That's why, for example, Facebook, as soon as Facebook doesn't work anymore, they would break down. They would need to go to something else and do that kind of method again. The point being basically is this fast growth comes from somewhere. This kind of fast growth you can only do if you don't care about the stakeholders in your system. There's somewhere that you extract value from in order to bring that to investors or to wherever. If you think of Uber and Amazon, well, they generate value for us as the class customers, but if you think of the workhouse worker, like the warehouse workers at Amazon, or the stories that you hear from Uber drivers basically not getting any social security, etc., through the service that they're doing, this is where they're extracting that value from to grow faster, right? And the only exception here on this slide is actually this company on the right bottom, which is Loop. And this is something I'm pretty excited about, because Loop kind of combines, they're growing fast, but so far I haven't seen anything that is against the concept of regenerative business models. So they care about the whole community. They actually, what they do is they create a subscription model between companies like, let's say, commodity companies like Coca-Cola, Ariel, what else? Exactly, like Häagen-Dazs ice cream, basically. So that you're, instead of going to the store and buying those in plastic bottles, you actually get all of your products in reusable bottles, and they're being transported to you rather than you actually going to. So you could also do a pickup service. But the interesting thing here is that there's a lot of new companies now coming up. Also, Impossible Foods, Beyond Meat, all of these companies that do care about the communities around them and don't try to not extract value from them, but still get focus and a lot of attention from international investment, because this is what's nice to see, is that there's this kind of new move from large investors to focus actually on these ideas and give them the backup money that they need in order to work in other countries, for example, as well. So this is something I'm super excited about, and I hope there's a lot more of this going on. So now that you know about extractive and regenerative business models, how can you actually find opportunities for your company? And it's a little bit of a similar structure as you already saw before. It's about inner and outer ecosystem, but now you kind of focus it not on a project, but kind on your company, or on the client company that you would like to do this analyzation for. So what you first do is you kind of map out all the stakeholders in that system. So for example, in a design company, it would be maybe HR, the design department, owners, business development, etc. So you kind of map all of those different groups out, and then see what are the values that these groups actually exchange right now with each other. So for example, and this is just a very, very simplified example of employees and owner, you would actually have a look at the system and then say, okay, what kind of value is now being exchanged? Well, right now, very likely it's going to be owner gives money to employee, employee gives time to owner. That's it. There's not really a lot of, let's say, long-term focus on any of these, because any of these two values could be just breaking down at whatever moment. And this is kind of why you get in the design industry also a lot of rotating workers, basically. Seems like an extractive method, is an extractive method. And then you basically look at what kind of values. So you map out the different values that are being exchanged right now, and then you look at the system again and say, okay, what kind of exchanges could happen that spark long-term collaboration, right? So for example, an owner could give learning opportunities, growth opportunities to their employees, not giving less money for because of that, but what you get back immediately is a company where I can grow, I would stay with. A company that is focusing on me growing as a skillful designer in any direction that I want to kind of learn into is definitely one that I would like to stay with and kind of fight for and be really invested in, right? So this is just a very simple example of what could be an internal better value exchange. So I'm a bit interested in what you actually say. 1 second, I'm going to open a quick poll. Having that in mind now, what kind of does your company have any sort of program in place that makes you feel like it really generates long-term value and long-term collaboration between you and the company, or the different departments between each other? So depending on how you feel about this topic, I would really like to hear if you have something in place or if you don't really have anything in place. Also, if you have something in place, cool ideas are always welcome. You can write those in the chat or however. So we can see how we can as well improve ourselves. So I'm gonna give you 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's it. And holding. Vale. So obvious answer here. A lot of these companies already kind of work with extractive methods. that is an opportunity, right? It doesn't have to be that way. And there is also a way of, if you actually now with this toolkit come up with new ideas, this is what the toolkit is for. You look at the values that are being exchanged at the moment, and you look at the values that could be exchanged with each other to spark this kind of stuff. And as an example of how you can actually add value to your clients or to your customers, Olaluth, the energy company, they also offer to their customers, without any like extra, coupons or reduced prices of the whole e-Cultra system, or the Cultra system, which is the electric scooters in Barcelona. Which is great for e-Cultra because obviously they have now a greater base. Olaluth finds it great because they are basically moving their customers into a more renewable way of transport. And in the end, they know exactly that this will be valuable for their client base, because also their client base really focuses on renewable energy. And so the whole thing makes sense by itself. There's not a lot of like payment, etc. happening between all of these three. It's just shared value for each other. And that is the main example there. The last bit about the toolkit is actually having a look at the outer ecosystem around your company. So, for example, what kind of stakeholders are around your company that you would like to be in contact with, let's say, that you think could help you move into being a more sustainable business. So it's not just the clients that you have now, it's like, what are these kind of, let's say, wish list clients that would really be, or where you know those would already be on the side of accepting sustainable concepts, etc. Are there any universities, schools, communities around you that you could have interconnection with, right? So you kind of just map out all of these stakeholders again around you, the whole community, and then analyze what kind of interaction is happening between those right now. If there's no value exchange, well, how can you spark value exchange? How can you make that first arrow go from one bubble to the next? And what kind of thing could you get back from them? And how could this become a real partnership after a while? The focus here is sustainable development and regenerative business, right? You could really quickly mistake this for how can I make more money with some sort of partner or whatever. The focus here needs to be that you're trying to move into a more regenerative model, and that in all the workshop needs to be in your minds, because if not, you're just going into any sort of direction. Just a little bit of an example of a really, really cool concept that I think is the collaboration between Ben & Jerry's ice cream and the Greystone Bakery in New York. What the Greystone Bakery did before that collaboration was already really cool. They were a bakery that they asked 0 questions before employing people. No background checks, no identity, no nothing. You just could go there and start working. If you do the job well and you show up on the next day, vale, cool. Then you handle, kind of move yourself a little bit more to the next step. What they know is that they're just this in-between step for people to kind of get a hold in society again, and they support them with learning programs, etc., in order to make them ready for real jobs afterwards, right? So they know that the people are not going to be there for ages, but they know that they are supporting the community by making them valuable people, members of the society again, right? And now they ramped up their operations a lot, because Ben & Jerry's basically asked, can you make all of our brownies for the ice creams? And we're going to also support you to expand your business and do that for more people. So massively cool value exchange between them, and extreme benefit for the community around them. So this is pretty much the toolkit. It seems quite simple, but you need this kind of visualization in order to even see what are the values that are being exchanged, in order to create new ones where there are none, right? And a little bit of a set of questions that I give on your path to pretty much, let's say, close the whole thing off is, imagine two stakeholders on that map. What if you invested into direct partnership between these two stakeholders? If it's internal or external, doesn't matter. The question is the same. Instead of them being two entities, try to see them as like an ingrained partnership and see what kind of forms could that collaboration take, right? Can you be a research branch of a client that doesn't have that capability? Can you invite them constantly over to workshops, etc., or have talks with them? Anything really goes. The second point is, what if we implemented some of those ideas? How could this really benefit the two stakeholders equally, right? This needs to be thought of, because if not, you run the risk of having a one-sided business, right? So how can each of those people in the environment benefit from those interactions? And the last one is the same question as before. These things need buy-in as well. If you have a great idea for your company, there's a reason for these things not to be in place right now. Maybe it's because they didn't see it before, right? Maybe it's because they didn't see the benefit, but there will be some small barriers in the way in order to make this kind of collaboration even happen. So that's where the question comes in place. On your idea, have a think of what would be needed for this to be real, what is standing in the way right now, and why is it not already happening? If you can answer those questions, you know where to get active. You know where to get active and to create actual buy-in for the idea. And that is pretty much it for the toolkit as a whole, as it is kind of right now. There's extra bits and details. Obviously, the toolkit itself is a lot more structured. It needs a little bit of cleaning up and still is in work in progress. But we would be very happy to share this with everyone in the days to come. So yeah, that is it for now. But obviously, it's a QA session now for whatever I just said about this toolkit, like actually about the whole talk. What questions are there?
So I just reopened one from the prior section, which I think is also related to this one, which is from an anonymous attendee. So they ask, how do you make sure the results or solutions are going towards the three areas where you want to focus? So planet, people, and environment in this case, or profit, economic profit.
See, specifically in the second toolkit, because it's about business opportunities. Just because of the word business already, you're thinking of how can this make money. So the point there is to reiterate constantly in the workshops and in the wording of the toolkits and everything, and even in the pictures that you use for maybe guiding the workshops or whatever, to make people understand that this is for trying to find opportunities for regenerative business. Because otherwise people get guided into all kinds of ideas. Obviously, you also don't want to shut these ideas down because you're looking for opportunities. Every idea at that moment is valuable. But as a next step, to make sure to filter through these ideas and to filter through these opportunities and actually say, is this going into the direction that we wanted to go? Yeah.
And also, I think it's we tend to always think, in this one direction of growth, and that growth is measured by money.
Yeah.
But if we establish different measurement methods, and we say, okay, and it's related a bit to what the measuring and metrics of popularity. So what are the goals that we have internally? And this can even by itself be a workshop that you have with the stakeholders in your company, and say, okay, what are our goals aside of economic growth, of revenue or market share? If we plan outside of that and we say, okay, this is out of the equation, we are not here to make money, let's say, and you put yourself in that hypothetical case, what would growth mean? What would that impact or positive impact mean in the planet, in people's life, and still economic, because economics is not just money, it's also goods. So I think there's a lot of things to think about here if you just take that out of equation. It's just not a gross margin that we need to have by the end of the year.
Sí, definitely. The 100% agree on anything and everything.
So maybe I can pick up another question from the ones that we had before, because we don't have any new
okay.
yet.
Then I'll get into those.
I'm reopening one that is also anonymous. How do we convince the clients that this is the way to go? That to be sustainable is not more expensive, and so on?
Good point. You kind of need to understand what does the client even want, right? Really often, so if I were to convince a client of a more sustainable concept, one thing is, yes, the cost could be a factor, meaning I need to, but the thing is, cost is not always a factor that much as we think it is. It's just that fear of we might need to change something, so that means a cost increase, and we're not sure if this cost is even going to be an increase in the end. So basically, you kind of need to do a simulation for that before, right? And that is this kind of cost simulation. This is where you kind of need to talk with people from supply chain, etc., to make sure that there is no question about this. The problem here is always that people don't have the knowledge, so they specifically just say no to a concept that they have no knowledge about. If they don't, few clients don't agree with trying to become more sustainable. But the main questions that we get is, are clients valuing that or not? Is it generating value for them? So if you can prove that with testings or interviews, etc., then you can already get a lot more of a push to your client, because you can say, well, but your clients are asking for this. If the clients are asking for this, they very quickly move into that. And the other thing is, get the questions out of the way, because if they don't know how much it's going to cost, they're going to say no. So
and I think it's very linked to what we were sharing now from the 8 essentials. Aspire. If you're going to aspire, how much can you aspire? What level of innovation can you plan for with the knowledge you have of your client? So that's the first point. Surf the waters, see where you're navigating, and understand where are the doubts, and that way you can also create the materials. There's no one unique answer, because there's always different needs and different issues or setbacks, from different customers. And mainly, and as I was saying, it's risk. Innovation is a risk. Sustainable change through innovation is a risk. So it's how can we manage that risk? And that's our job, and saying, okay, we have this proposal, so we have this team, or we have this a material that supports our initiative and drives it through, to build that a assertiveness and get buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
We have one in the chat from Ale.
Sí.
So
have you tried to ask a client or ask the client what planet they want to leave their daughters and sons on? In a way, but that was only because I was sure that I have an ally in the room that everyone respects. It was kind of like a question of, are we going to go down this direction? It's not quite useful for us from a money perspective, but it would be extremely good if we did this from a sustainability perspective. And the idea was about to not be taken, where I really just asked everyone in the room, are we really doing this? Really? Because there's nothing else going against this concept. But that I only was able to do because I knew that pretty much the person that is taking the decisions in the meeting was on my side. If that wouldn't be the case, I wouldn't have been able to play that card. But yeah, that is exactly the point though. Know your client. Because if you know that you have an ally on the side, you can do a lot more, obviously, because the buy-in is there. But yeah, know your client and know who are your allies on that side. Vale.
So we have still a question from the one before, the Q&A before. And it's from Carlos. So do you want us to, maybe if you want to, because it's a quite long question, I don't know if Carlos, you're still here.
That is a little Bible.
So perhaps we could open the mic and he could tell us a bit more.
Sí, definitely. Carlos, do you want to share your question on mic? I'm going to unmute you. Where are you? Carlos Salas?
Sí.
Carlos Salas, allowed to talk. Hello, Carlos. Are we invading your private space?
Maybe.
Wait.
Okay, we have a new one from Miroslav.
Vale.
What would you say to a client that asks you what is the ROI of investing into sustainability?
Again, sorry?
What would you say to a client that asks you what is the return of investment of investing into sustainability?
The return of investment, I think that is pretty much the same thing how I would answer any innovation investment question. The standard of innovation investment is this thing of 70-20-10, the three horizons, right? So you can't put all your money onto innovation, but you also need to be aware of what is long-term and what is intermediate term, right? Mm-hmm. So intermediate term, if I think of all the restrictions that are coming on, for example, in Europe in packaging in 2025, that is already one iteration of products on the market, meaning that means that is very short term already the next product that you're going to launch a little bit. So you could really say, vale, you could in that sense put 30% of your general business budget onto as a more sustainable solution that comes out in order to handle all of these new requirements that are going to come in 2025. But other than that, that is pretty much it. To the 10% should always be going on for discovering what could be done in the future. 20%, in your week, that's half a day for innovation. And then 20%, which is another day for figuring out what am I going to do next month, like what client am I going to work with, and then you're actually getting client work done, right? But only that half a day is going to give you back 80% of your actual like the ROI would be on long term on those 10% is 80% of what you're actually going to be doing in your future business. So the lion's share of what you're going to be doing in the future is based on those 10% now. And that is the strategy that big companies like ExxonMobil, Walmart, even all of those like kind of evilish companies, they know that. They go for that direction. Sustainability has exactly the same ROI kind of strategy. So yeah, the higher horizons are 70%, 20%, 10%. What you're doing now, what you're doing in intermediate, and what you're doing in long term.
So I think that's all for...
It's getting dark outside.
Yes. That's all for the questions. If we don't have anything else coming in, I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. 1 second. But we wanted to really thank you all for coming and being present today. I hope that the session today has been useful and that we can now continue talking. And if any doubts or any questions that may arise, please reach out to us. We are more than open to continue talking. No? Definitely.
And yeah, you'll hear about the update of the toolkit as well. We're going to be a lot more active in the future in these topics in general, and trying to like support communities in the area of circular economy, sustainability, and if you'd like to get notified by that, you can follow us on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, which is also where we're actually then going to, let's say, shoot out the actual toolkit in the end that we're going to share with everyone. Vale, okay.
We have one more in the...
Sorry?
Do we have one question more in the Q&A?
No, it's just awesome.
Okay.
Very nice from whoever said that.
Thank you for being here, and you can get in touch with us, as Bernd was saying, and hopefully we can have you with us in the next workshops to come, and as we continue to build and develop this toolkit. And once again, any feedback or comments that you may have, send it our way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.